Hi, and welcome to the Reflective Rebels podcast, where every couple of weeks I sit down with someone to explore those moments when things changed in their lives. I'm Ben, a qualified coach, but this isn't a self-help podcast. These episodes aren't success stories with neat endings. They're honest conversations about bold decisions to shake things up, or what happens when the universe throws some shit our way. I'm on a mission to spread joy, because life is too short to be shit. My hope is that by hearing someone else's story today, you might feel more connected, learn something about yourself, or perhaps be inspired to rebel and do something different that feels good to you. Because you're not alone, you're gorgeous and amazing, and your story is not over yet. Let's get started. So hi.
Hello.
And welcome to the Reflective Rebels podcast. I thought we'd start somewhere a little unexpected and a simple question of what's your favourite thing to do when it's raining?
Oh, well, it rains a lot in Cumbria, doesn't it? I'll start with one of my favourite things is to actually get outside in the rain, because I think part of that is actually just about the clothing. I've recently started running, and what I've found is I actually quite like running in the rain, as long as I've got a big woolly hat on and I've got my headphones in. And so actually I'm probably quite highly likely to get outside and just go for a run. I think if I was to stay indoors, I love listening to music. I made a bold decision quite a long time ago, and I invested in a fairly high-end hi-fi kit, and I have the most beautiful speakers that sound almost like you're sat listening to live artists. I like to go into the room on my own with a book or a notebook and just listen to tunes with a cup of coffee. And there's something about music that I think connects with me personally. I used to play the piano. I am dabbling and thinking about trying to play the piano again, but I used to play, so I got to grade 6. And so there's something about music that just always really sits well, and it seems to, I don't know, say calm, but vibrate or chime with me in a way that other things don't.
So how are you listening to music then? Am I picturing you choosing an album, or is it a Spotify playlist? What are you?
I'm an album listener on the main, a bit old school. You know, the artist has gone out there and they've done the full album for a reason. So I will do playlists, but I tend to like to listen to a full album, so then you get the flow of the music, and it can really vary. I love listening to Chopin, which not a lot of people, I don't tell a lot of people that, but I used to enjoy playing Chopin.
That's that on a podcast.
Yeah, I do. There's just something about the way the music makes a sense and a feeling, either of springtime, of waterfall, or a storm, or things like that. But equally, I'm a big Radiohead fan. I've seen them a lot of times. Or the Prodigy, or the Savages, or God knows what. I like quite a wide range of music, and so some of it I think just depends on the mood I'm in at the time.
So describe the scene for us then. You've got Chopin playing.
Yeah.
What we're looking around the room. Where are you? Are you sat? Are you walking?
We've got a lovely end terraced house. We're quite fortunate. The living room space that we've got at the front is probably one of those old traditional front rooms that we don't actually go in that often, so it's kind of a quiet space. And it's an old Victorian house. There's wooden floors, quite calm, quite a calm space to be in. And I tend to sit fairly centrally so that I get a nice balance of the sound. Yes, I am that nerdy. I'm going to admit it. But I'll just, like I am now, just perhaps with a notebook and a sketchbook. So sometimes it helps me to think about client projects, or even just... I tend to always be doing something like a project or something at home. So I'm designing or thinking or just doodling sometimes.
So what's the latest project at home?
Latest project at home is in the garden. So unfortunately, we found out that my partner Jenny has been diagnosed to be terminally ill with cancer just about a month ago. So one of the positives of things that we can do and Jen can do is sort the garden out. We are very lucky to have a large garden. So I've designed I'm not even sure the right word, I think it's a pergola is what you call it, a wooden structure that we can sit under, have friends round, have a fire pit, grow some plants up around it, and just be outside. So I've designed that and joined a friend that I know is going to come along and build it shortly. So yeah, that was my latest one.
So is creativity quite important to you?
Yeah, I think so. I think it took me a long while to realise I was creative. I'm from Burnley. There's not a lot, when I was growing up in Burnley I finished school in 1985, there was not a lot of creativity. And I didn't even realise there was a job that you could do and be creative. I wanted to be an architect. And I was told by the careers teacher, there's no jobs around here for that, son. Why don't you either work in the mill or become an engineer? And I was so lucky that a good friend of mine showed me a brochure for doing illustration work at Blackpool College. And it was technical illustration, but 3D, all in perspective, with sectional cutaways showing exactly how things worked. And I took one look at it and I thought the two things. I really liked my friend Christine. We got on great together. So the thought of us being away at college in Blackpool together was brilliant. And also, as a secondary thing, learning how to illustrate. And I think from there on, I met people that were creative that I'd never met growing up in Briarfield, where I'm from. And it just feels like home. It's just the most natural. I can't even explain why. It's everything. It's how my brain works. It's how I like to express myself. And it's just really calming for me. Even though quite a lot of the work I do now isn't that creative, it's commercial, strategy documents and things like that. But I suppose that's still creative thinking. But I think it entertains my brain. I love the thought of big picture stuff. It drives Jenny, my other half, mad that we'll be talking about designing the front room, and I've done the kitchen, the bathroom, the upstairs bathroom and the bedroom and the garden. And I quite like that little explosion through my head, and I can quite easily see it and join all the dots together and then bring it back down to one room. But I know that that's not everybody, but that is me.
So this might not be the easiest thing to answer, but I love that idea of a little explosion through your head. And perhaps for some of us who don't think like that, it might be interesting to know more about what that feels like.
Yeah. So I tend to not think or try to think, which is the first thing about it. I think quite a lot of the time one side of your brain takes over. And what I've found is if I don't try to structure or control my thinking, but actually just let it come out, that's probably when I have my best ideas. They might all be rubbish, but they're still my best ones. And then it's just a feeling that I have. Actually, it's really a happy, warm feeling of being entertained. And it's like just a connection of dots, like going from one to another. And then I'll have ideas that overlay on the dots. And sometimes I have to go right the way back to the start once I've updated my thinking. But I have the capacity in my head to do quite a lot of that large-scale processing. I don't know how or why, and quite quickly. And yeah, if I sit and think about it now, it just actually makes me quite happy. And I think that's something that I do a lot in many areas of my life. I always have to have something in my head to focus on sometimes. And then I like to contrast that with something quite physical so that my brain's entertained and also my body hopefully is fitter than it was a few months ago. But that idea of tiring yourself out in both ways, I suppose, is what I like. And then I think I'm a nicer person as a result of those things.
So that maybe brings us back to running, which you mentioned earlier. Talk us through the last run you went on. Where did you go?
Yeah, so my last run was actually my first run for a little while. So I did 5K on a fairly gentle flat run from Kendal. And I do like to wear the same stuff because you get used to it and how it feels, and you don't want anything to kind of interrupt your mind, because I think running the more I get to understand it, is about controlling your mind more than your body. Your body can go a lot further than your mind can sometimes. So I found out that I like running to music. So yeah, just the standard thing, probably an aging, balding dad going out for a run. I quite like Kendal. It's got quite varied runs, but my last one was 5K along the river and back. And then I took it easy on this one, but sometimes I do like to try and challenge myself to see, am I getting faster? Am I getting better? I'm working my way to doing a half marathon and then hopefully a marathon. As I mentioned before, Jenny's unfortunately got cancer, so I'm going to try and raise some money for Eden Valley Hospice in the process.
So you talked about music. Is there a particular song that if you're really strolling up a hill that you hope would come on that's going to get you to the top?
So LA Woman, I found by the Doors, is a brilliant running song. It's 8 minutes long, and like 3 lots of that is 24 minutes. So that's my target for 5K. Can I get? And I I do like the Doors, and like within that song, there's obviously different shifts and elements to it. So for running, I would say that is probably really helpful at the moment, a current one. I tend to go for the more noisier, more angry type music, like Rage Against the Machine's also up there. The fuck you, I won't do what you tell me.
So that's fascinating. Again, the contradiction present in that. Would you ever sit in the front room with your sketch pad and put Rage Against the Machine on?
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah, I'm known for playing the music quite loud. I think they go, Dad's in the front room, leave him alone. But yeah, I think it just depends on my mood, to be honest.
So what sparks that choice?
I think it's probably things that are going on, like subconsciously. You sort of sit down and you think, what will I listen to today? But we all have challenges in life, don't we? And I think sometimes if I want to calm down and slow down, it's probably more Chopin. And if I'm wanting probably to be, and it's subconscious, probably a bit more upbeat, a bit more happy. It's probably, the other end of the spectrum. It's not conscious, but it is funny when you analyse things, isn't it? And I think also, as you get a bit older, you realise, just how different we all are and how we all cope with things in different ways and what our go-tos are, in terms of when you've had something particularly challenging in life and you need to find a channel or an outlet just where you go for those things.
Yeah, which probably nicely brings us to what this podcast is about, which is the idea of turning points, which could be things that get thrown at us, could be decisions that we make. They could be large, but they could also be small and quiet, and nobody might even notice those things. But what's been a significant turning point in your life?
Probably one of the first ones that springs to mind. I was unfortunate in that I got Bell's palsy when I was 15. And for people that don't know, that's basically overnight I lost use of my right-hand side of my face totally. So I couldn't feel anything. So if you imagine, draw a line down the middle of your face and the whole right half, I couldn't feel, it was numb. My mouth dropped and sagged. I couldn't blink. My eye watered, and I couldn't move. So, and as somebody who was 15 to 16, that's probably the worst kind of time for something like that to happen. And it was hard, and I didn't have the tools to cope with that at the time. I couldn't really express to people what was going on. And it was hard. I used to have to go and have I still remember it now. So they put electrodes on your face pads, basically wet pads, and ran electricity through it. And so that moved my face and things like that. And I'm very fortunate now in that pretty much all my movement has come back, and that people that don't know me from before don't really pick it Whereas if I look at myself in the mirror in the morning, I see it all the time. I'd say it's had lots of positives, which might sound really weird, but I've made loads of really good friends, probably as a result of what happened with my face. So I mentioned before about going to college with my friend Christine. I didn't actually go. I went the year after, and I met I'm still friends with a lot of the people at college now, and I know I wouldn't have got on as well with the friends, the group that was at Christine's year. It's given me a context in life. I think that I got bullied quite a lot. So I was only 5'2" when I went into secondary school, and I was 5'2" when I left, with a slopey face. So I was an easy target. And I suppose the way I used to cope with that is to not show anything at all. Don't give anybody anything to work with. Burnley can be quite a tough place. But the positives are that I met other people that had challenges. There was a girl called Elizabeth. Her brother had died in her final year of school. And it just gives a context. Actually, it's just your face. My siblings are still alive. They're all right. There's a friend, Graham, when I was at college in Blackpool, he had quite a bad bike accident. He was a pillion passenger on a bike. He broke his leg quite badly, and he was in traction for a long period of time. And the pain I was suffering was nothing like you could see him going through. So I think I've always been able, since then, I think, I've been able to look at life and go, two things. It's not that bad. and I know, like, it'll be over eventually. And, the day my face happened was awful. And 3 years after, it was a lot better. So, that things improve over time.
Being able to recognise that.
Yeah. And then the second thing is that there are usually people struggling a lot more with more severe things than I've ever had to deal with, or at least similar things that you can then relate to. So it's allowed me to go, better days will come, and try and put things in a context, because it's quite easy, isn't it, to be consumed by emotions at times in the dark side, whereas I think I'm quite good at that now in not being.
That's really interesting. Yeah. So you mentioned that your sort of teenage self wasn't able to articulate what you were feeling or thinking at the time. Are you able to do that now with your sort of more mature...
My other half, Jenny, will say no.
I mean specifically what you were feeling at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. I struggle with it. I do, because the way I have coped is to put things in boxes and bury them, and that works quite well. It's quite efficient, apparently. The way it's like, if I imagine my son Joel going through those things, it's just awful. It's a really funny thing, but people look at you and interact with you different when there's something not right, or they look, not right, but different. And so there was a sense of isolation, I think. And also, I just used to hate people looking at me. I couldn't stand up in front of a room of people and give a talk. In fact, I ran out of my English class rather than do that, which, looking back now, I quite enjoy giving talks and presentations. And I never thought, probably even into my 30s, I never thought I would be able to do that. I would say I was immature. I was a very late developer, and I just didn't fit with, I didn't fit with where everybody else was in life. And as such, I think I covered up quite a lot because I didn't want anyone to know. So I got quite good at hiding things. So, yeah, I would say, obviously, if I'd have been able to talk about these things and felt able to talk about these things, it would have been easier. But it was 1985. It's quite a tough time. Burnley's quite a tough place. People don't talk, and there wasn't the support mechanisms in place. And I think it probably, even if I was offered it, and I can't remember if I was or not, but I probably would have turned it down.
Yeah. Well, what would you say to yourself now if you were able to meet that teenage you? about that?
I suppose I'm a bit different. I am different now in that I'm quite happy to admit my faults and what I'm worried about to people that I trust. And I think that's it. It doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks. It's what you think and feel, and knowing that somebody else is there to help you through that. Because I think I've got blind spots sometimes. I just can't see the thing that I can't see. And so sometimes I just need some help from somebody supportive to go, have you thought about, or if you put yourself in somebody else's shoes, how would that feel?
Right, should we move on to another turning point then? Explore another part of the
Butterworth life.
Yeah.
Go on.
Let's pick up the story. Jump a bit further ahead. Where are we now and what's going on?
I say the next big thing for me was moving to the Lake District. I love being in the outdoors. I've done a lot of ridge scrambling and challenges and things like that in the outdoors. And an opportunity came up to do design work in the Lake District and leaving Burnley, and it is one of the best things and best decisions I've ever made. I was very lucky to work with some talented people on some really nice accounts and learnt a lot. And again, I'd say I was probably still quite immature, and they would look out, my employers would look out for me. And we were a nice group of 4 people, just doing nice work and growing up in the Lake District, lots of happy times. I shared a house with people that did work in the outdoors. So they were learning things like chainsawing, coppicing, dry stone walling, wall building. And yeah, we'd work during the day, and then I'd be out in Ambleside and kicking around or going up a hill after work and things like that. And I think, again, in terms of things that just naturally make me happy, being with friends on a hill, watching the sun coming down in the dark, half rolling down some of the hill because you've lost the path a bit, it's something I love doing. And again, something that I think I'm quite good at.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, I'm really fascinated by these moments in our lives, because you described it as an opportunity sort of coming up. Now, did the universe present you with something? How did it come about? In
terms of the job in the lake?
Yeah, how did that?
So my friend Christine, basically, she'd already come up the year before. We were all from Burnley. So Pat and Bob used to have an agency in Burnley, working for PR agencies and some quite large accounts in Manchester. And then they just got fed up of living in Burnley and moved to the Lake District and took Christine with them. And then their business grew to the point that they could take me on. So I think for the first 35 years of my life, Christine was a really good friend. She still is a really good friend, so I don't mean it like that, but just in terms of where we were. So we went to college, we went to school, we worked together,
yeah.
And then sort of life happens, doesn't it? And people get married and moved on that way.
Yeah.
But there were quite happy days. I was all working together there in Windermere. Yeah, nice accounts, and like I say, meeting people, and we'd also go to festivals and things like that. We used to go to quite a few music festivals.
So you painted the picture of the Lake District life and the hills and the outdoors.
Yeah.
And we can all sort of imagine that, or we've seen a postcard with it on. Paint the picture of the Burnley life that you left. That you left behind for us.
Burnley is people from Burnley are very loyal to Burnley, kind of insular. I would still say I was very lucky growing up in Burnley because I didn't have it as tough as a lot of people that I saw. So if I think about where I went for secondary school, I was in a place called Reedley, which was just on the periphery of a quite rough area where the school was. Quite often I would have to run from home to school because there would be people there trying to kick the shit out of you, basically. and I was picked on a few times. There was a lot of fighting. It was, at times it was rough. Had friends that lived in quite difficult circumstances. There was one guy, and at school, he would be fine with you. He was a really good footballer or cricketer. If you met him on a Friday night after he'd had some beers, he'd just look to beat you up. And a couple of times I've had to run away from him on a Friday night. Or I can give you another example that my friend Dave and I were walking home. We'd probably be 18 at this point, walking home from the pub, and a car came screeching up, and the window came down, and it was like, "Oh, Uli!" My friend was Dave Hull. "You all right?" And I don't know why, but my friend, it had snowed at the time. He'd got a snowball in his hand, and I don't know why till today he did it, but he threw it through the window at his friend in the car, who then became not his friend. And we were chased around Briarfield by this car, and these guys had got baseball bats and knives. And I remember hiding behind some sheds, just hoping they would go. And that was, I guess, what you would run into. You wouldn't plan it. You wouldn't necessarily wind anybody up, although Dave did that day. He prodded the bear. But on occasion, you would just get people who were that way out and just looking for fights. And so I'm a big Burnley fan. As many people know, I love Burnley Football Club. I've been a supporter since I was about 13, but I was very glad to leave Burnley. Although some of my family are still there.
So, what was it about you or your circumstances then that meant you got out, if you like, that, it changed?
I think I was lucky to have gone away at an early age to Blackpool to study, and then that led to travel. So as a group of friends, we travelled around Europe, and people had work placements and things like that, and so we would go to where their work placements was. And I think that led me to realise there was more and a better fit for me away from Burnley. And again, I'm very lucky to have the opportunity of that job offer at a point in life where I didn't have any commitments, whereas for some other people it's early on and you end up with a house and a mortgage and a job and things like that, and it becomes a lot harder to change. At the same time, I would say I kind of think I quite like change. I'd get bored of things just being the same. And so, not always consciously, but yeah, I do look to try and find the next thing.
Yeah. Should we talk about what place joy, I use the word joy, but whatever that means to you has in your life now?
Yeah. Okay. I find joy or happiness, whatever you want to call it, in a lot of places, and it can be really quite varied. There's another phrase, isn't there, in terms of glimmer and moments of glimmer. So, for example, if I'm walking around Kendal on an afternoon, I love the little snippets of overheard conversations that you get. The fag end of a conversation where people are either getting on really well or falling out. Yeah. And you just hear those words, don't you? And I love accents as well. And I just imagine what's going on in their world. And then I start to think of little scenarios of what's going on.
When was the last time that happened? Can you remember a sentence?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact words, but there was an old couple going around Kendal. They must have been 80, and they were still sort of chipping away at each other, where me and Jen would, and grumbling about something, like somebody left the toilet roll on the side of the bathroom, and why can't you just put it in? And it's things like that, and you just go, that's life, isn't it? That's everybody. I find joy in other people. So I'm very lucky at the moment that Harry and Shona that work with me, we all get on great. And I really enjoy seeing them develop and taking on projects. Shona's doing a job at the moment. It's definitely one that she knows she can do. She's doing it really well. And you can see that she's happy within it. And that I find that makes me happy, because I think my job as their boss is to help them do some of the things that are hard or difficult or uncomfortable, and just support them to do those things. Similarly, Harry's been taking on a lot more web projects for us recently, and he's running them really well, and he can do them and deliver aspects of them better than I can do. And you think, brilliant, you just go with that, and I'll fit in, and you tell me what you need, and I'll sort myself out around that. My son's 15. He's had a very difficult life, I would say. He went through measures that meant he changed how he lived. But when he came to Jenny and I, he was a vegetarian that had never ate a vegetable. His diet consisted of chips and cinnamon swirls. And I would say one of the happiest moments with my son was when we were on holiday once, and he just ate a pizza out of nowhere from us trying and cajoling and falling out and crying to get him to eat food that was more balanced. He wouldn't. And then, there we were on holiday somewhere in Spain, and he's scoffing a pizza with all kinds of things on it you've been trying to give him, and he said no. And I feel very lucky that he did do that, and you wonder where that came from on that particular day, but I'll take it.
So how did you feel in that moment?
I think I cried. It's ridiculous that you think that your son won't eat certain foods, and you think, how did that happen? How did we end up here? And there are good reasons why we ended up there, but to see him do that and just be so pleased for him, really, and he did it all on his own, and it wasn't a battle, and it then gave him something to build on to move his diet along. And if you sort of ask him now, he'll the only thing he would ever say he wanted to eat was chips, and whilst he still likes them, I think one of his favourite meals is Jenny's lasagna, and that's just a proper win, isn't it?
So you've talked about joy then, really. A lot of your joy is in helping others or seeing others grow.
So it's the little things, I think, in life. I think I've been very lucky. I've had the opportunity, and I've done some big things, or for me, things that a lad from Burnley perhaps would never get the opportunity to do. And I've also done those things and been unhappy. And so I think it is the small moments. And I'm glad I've got to a point that I can appreciate the small moments, because there's a lot of those in life, aren't there? And if you're always looking for the big thing, and don't get me wrong, it's always nice if something big comes along and it's brilliant and you have a nice time, but there's only downwards from there, I think. It's not sustainable. There aren't enough highs to keep that high going. I remember at one point in life, and I have no idea where from, but there's a religion where they just try to keep themselves centered and be in the middle, and that struck a chord with me. And so I consciously go, well, that was great, but actually let's just try and bring it back down and be a bit grounded with stuff. Because equally, if something shit really happens and something bad happens, then I know that I can get myself back to the middle, and I've got the stuff in the bank from the highs to go, well, actually I can get back to that, or this won't last, or tomorrow will be better. And I think I have had times in life where it's been so bad I've had to take days, hour by hour, morning or afternoon, and do it in chunks. And I think things like that have really helped. And I found other things that help me to keep me grounded. So I had some really testing times in life. I faced many and varied false allegations to the police, to the point where I ended up needing a safeguarding number from the police to protect me from the allegations. And before all of that happened, I would say I hated gardening. But actually, there's an Acer tree in our garden that probably saved me. And I love it and I hate it in equal measures. It's a beautiful tree. It's quite large. There's bluebells and all kinds of bulbs grow up in the springtime, and it's wonderful to see. But in the summer, when I'm trying to get my grass done, it's where all the weeds come from. And so I just find myself under there sometimes weeding. And I actually do enjoy it, but don't tell Jenny I enjoy it, because it needs doing this weekend. But it's sort of, having that as a thing that I can remember times when I've said I've been unable to go into work, and I've spent a day just weeding under the tree. And that's really helped and got me through to the next bit.
What would you say you've learnt from that tree then?
I'm somebody who doesn't show when they're upset very often. I would say quite well. I can bury it from everything I spoke about before. People won't necessarily know when I'm upset. I'll just go quiet, I suppose, is probably one of the signs. But I think I've learnt that I was then able to talk to Jenny about what was going on and why I'm under the tree, and rather than being at work. So that's probably, I think it's having someone to trust, isn't it, that you know's got your back, believes you, wants the best for you. And I didn't always have that, but I do now.
I was hoping to explore what's next.
Yeah.
Which, given what you've said about Jenny,
might
be an very uncertain time. But, what's pulling you now?
So there's quite a lot going on. So obviously some of the things around Jenny are unknown, other than the fact it is a terminal illness. And so we're trying to make plans and rearrange life so that that's as happy and as positive as it can be, knowing the outcome. So that in itself is challenging, because Jenny's been somebody that, she used to run a hospice essentially. That was a big part of her job, and now she's at home, and she's, I think it's fair to say, finding it difficult being at home all the time. And then alongside the chemotherapy drugs, it's difficult as to how much she can do during each day. And so we're having to try and find a way to do the nice things within the capabilities and the abilities that we have. So that's something that we're working on. So that will involve some travel, some holidays, maybe going and seeing some events and things like that. I think I've even finally managed to persuade her to come and watch a Burnley football game with me, which wasn't on the bucket list.
Will you be running away from anyone?
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. But so there's lots of little things and like adjustments that we're making with Jen in terms of how she would like to live the rest of the life that she has, and also what happens with our children, in amongst all of that. So Theo has just passed his degree course in York, going to pick him up tomorrow, so he's coming back for his new chapter. Finley, the middle child, is heading to Liverpool to do a music course, so he's starting his new one. And my son Joel is going into his last year at school. So they're all going to need support and some help through all those little transitions and things like that. And then I've got personal goals and challenges. So one thing I mentioned before, I'm going to get fitter, and I'm going to be doing 1 or 2 challenges to try and do some fundraising. But I've also got some things on the go for my business, Playing Creative. So there's developments to come there. So we've been sitting down between us, and I think partly stemming from what's happened to Jen, to go life short. Actually, what do we all really want? If we just sort of think about what makes us happy and the skills we've got, and we don't have to stick doing the same things, we can try some new things. And I can help people, with transferable skills, and I can help people with the confidence to try some of the things that they'd love to do, but just a bit cautious about. And then I think the other thing we've been doing is actually just taking some time out. So if it's been a nice sunny day, gone for a walk. Like we have some lovely clients, but we're actually in a business where we don't have to be in the office 24/7. And so if an opportunity's come along, whether it's been, like with your Reflective Rebels pottery class, or the sketch and sip, or doing the gill scrambling, we've really appreciated the chance to get out and do those, which is good development. But similarly, like we have been out just for a walk, just to get some fresh air, and we've either worked a bit later or just rejig the week a little bit to try and make some of the nice things happen during the week too. So I think there's probably more of that, really.
And those people. Those people are all there for you.
Yeah, and
as much as you talked about
they're there
helping
now.
them.
Yeah, I don't know, that's a really good point. I am very lucky to have people around that, I look out for and they look out for me. And, we've had some really wonderful friends come forward. If anything that they can do, which, is not always something people can do, but even just them asking and popping round and things like that. Yeah, definitely. Really appreciated.
Mm. And I suppose it links to what you said about the big successes not necessarily being the things that make us happy.
No.
There's also joy in sadness.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. We went to a funeral of Jen's uncle a few months ago up in Scotland, and there was a really big turnout. He was a religious man. The church and the ceremonies were wonderful. And if anybody speaks as kindly as me, as they did of John when he passed, there was a lot of love in the room for him. And yes, he died, but we all die. We just don't talk about
life.
it.
Yeah,
we don't see it, but we all do it. It's probably one of the few guaranteed things, isn't it?
Well, probably the only one.
And I think at the moment it naturally makes me more reflective to go, actually, what do I really want and what do I don't want? And what would my next, however long I've got left, what does that actually really look like? And it does make you think about what matters.
Mm. Is there anything you would want to say to other people? This is the wrong words, but that gift of reflection you've had, that moment to go, oh, hang on.
I think it just comes down where I've ended up is that being nice to people matters, being kind matters, and trying to help people matters to me, because I know the things that I've struggled on. So if I can help people through the bits that I've struggled on, I think the only thing I would say to people is probably the cliches, find somebody you can talk to, find yourself an Acer tree or whatever it is, just don't sit and dwell and stew. There are loads of people out there now that will help people, whether that's just friends and going for a pint or kicking a ball around, or whether that's, formal organisations and things like that, And
what would you say about people who might be afraid that they might make it worse by asking? Because obviously me sat here, I'm really aware of how you must feel, and I know I'm nervous to ask, but it's part of life and we do need to talk about it. So what would you say?
Yeah, I think it's choosing your moments, isn't it, and trying to find the right way into a conversation sometimes. And that in itself is a skill, isn't it? And I've not always had that, I would say. Like from the little I know, if people want to be in a comfort zone and then you try and take them to a point where they just feel really uncomfortable, it's going to go badly. Whereas actually sometimes people are in a space where they're okay to be asked. So I suppose it's about how you ask, isn't it? Asking people if it's okay to ask, Craig, I know you're going through some shit stuff at the minute. Would you like to talk about it? Or I've got a question.
Yeah.
Are you all right with me asking that?
And then I suppose that person has the choice to say yes or no.
Yeah.
And you've given them.
And I think the other thing is, it's like, do you want a hug or do you want some answers? Again, I've got that wrong on many an occasion, but that's another good way in, isn't it? How can I help? What kind of help? What would be good for you? And so the person gets what they need. All right.
Yeah. What about those spaces under the tree? What role do they play now?
I think for me, I don't know whether I think it's a bit like meditation type stuff. And so a bit like when I go and either for my run or go and sit in the front room listening to music, I kind of recenter myself. I believe I do believe everything happens for a reason, the good and the bad, and that, you know, you can try and make things happen, but you probably won't make things happen. And sort of almost becoming at peace in that, like, you'll live the life you lead. Yeah, you need to be a good person. Yes, you need to try hard. You need to be kind. But I think it's sort of not always knowing what comes next is okay, and then just being able to feel confident and comfortable enough to take that on, which I think I do. Even I know it's going to be really upsetting with whatever happens, or when it happens with Jen. We'll get through it, and it'll be all right. And then you sort of plan for the next phases. I don't know what they are yet, but I know I'll be all right.
Do you want to stop?
All right. Yeah, I think, you know, death is part of life, and many people don't see it. I've not really seen it before. And I think I've heard phrases sort of like living with cancer, and I've not really known what it meant. And then you see the impact on the day-to-day on Jen. And so we will live with it, and we'll live beyond it. And I just don't know what that will be for me at the moment. That's all right.
Yeah.
There's no choices in it, is there? You know, you've just got to get on. And I think I'm not the sort of person to dwell. You know, I'll be sad, don't get me wrong, but I'll find a thing to throw myself into, and whether it's another Acer tree or another run or something like that, or other business ideas. You know, there will be something.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope that hearing that story has made you feel a bit more connected to them, to yourself, and maybe to the idea that change is possible. If today's conversation has stirred something in you, I'd love to hear about it. You can find me at reflectiverebels.co.uk, where you can also join my community for more stories like this one. Please do follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're ready to explore what your own rebellion might look like, I'm here to support you through coaching. Because life really is too short to be shit. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep rebelling in whatever way feels good to you.